June 4th, 1942, 4:30 a.m., 200 miles northwest of Midway Atoll. The pre-dawn gloom is shattered by the rhythmic, guttural roar of 1,000 horsepower Nakajima Sakai engines. On the flight deck of the Akagi, Admiral Nagumo stands on the bridge, the sharp salt spray of the Central Pacific stinging his face. Around him, the Kido Butai, the First Air Fleet, cuts through the swells with a predatory grace. 4 of the finest aircraft carriers on the planet, Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, and Hiryu, are positioned in a loose diamond formation, their wooden decks vibrating under the weight of the finest naval aviators in the world. Nagumo watches as the morning sun flags are waved in rhythmic circles. One by one, Type 99 Val dive bombers and Type 97 Kate torpedo planes lift off, and their blue exhaust flames flickering like ghost light against the purple horizon. To Nagumo and his staff, victory feels like a foregone conclusion. They are the architects of Pearl Harbor. They have swept the Royal Navy from the Indian Ocean and scorched the skies over Darwin. They believe the American fleet is depleted, demoralized, and, most importantly, nowhere near this patch of ocean. The enemy is unaware of our presence. Commander Minoru Genda, the brilliant but feverish air tactician, assures the bridge. But the atmosphere is thick with more than just humidity. There is a victory disease permeating the ranks, a dangerous overconfidence. Nagumo's orders are twofold: neutralize the American air base at Midway to pave the way for an invasion, and destroy any American carriers that might be lured out to play. By 7 a.m., the first strike on Midway is complete. But the report from flight leader Joichi Tomonaga is unsettling. There is need for a second strike. Nagumo hesitates. His scout planes, the eyes of the fleet, have been plagued by technical failures. One cruiser, the Tone, launched its search plane late. As the minutes tick by, Nagumo is forced into a tactical gamble. He orders the reserve aircraft, already armed with lethal long-lance torpedoes for a potential ship-to-ship engagement, to be stripped and rearmed with high-explosive ground contact bombs for a second hit on the island. The hangars of the Akagi and Kaga become a hellscape of frantic labor. Sailors sweat and swear as they manhandle massive ordnance. Safety protocols are ignored in the rush. Undetached torpedoes are rolled to the sides of the hangar rather than being returned to the armored magazines. The decks are a carpet of high explosive powder and volatile aviation fuel. Then, the radio crackles. It is the delayed scout from the Tone. Sightings of 10 ships, apparently enemy. 10 degrees, 240 miles from Midway. Nagumo's blood runs cold. 10 ships. What is their composition? The air in the bridge grows heavy. If there is a carrier among them, his current configuration, half rearmed with the wrong bombs, is a death sentence. At 8:20 a.m., the scout confirms the nightmare. The enemy is accompanied by what appears to be a carrier. Nagumo must make a choice. Launch his currently disorganized dive bombers, now without fighter protection, or recover his returning Midway strike force, rearm everything for a coordinated naval strike, and hit the Americans with a full, crushing blow. He chooses the latter. He chooses the proper way, the textbook way. As the sun climbs higher, the Japanese fleet begins a frantic dance of recovery and rearming. Below decks, the chaos doubles. Mechanics work with feverish intensity, switching bombs back to torpedoes once again. The smell of gasoline is overpowering. High above, the first American intruders appear, clumsy TBD Devastator torpedo bombers from the Hornet and Enterprise. They are uncoordinated. They have no fighter escort. One by one, the Japanese Zeros, flying combat air patrol, scream down from the clouds and shred them. The Americans fall into the sea in plumes of fire and white foam. Nagumo watches from the bridge, a grim satisfaction returning to his features. The American attacks are pathetic, suicidal, and ineffective. His Zeros are invincible. The Kido Butai is holding the line. At 10:20 a.m., the flight decks are finally ready. The engines are warming up. In 5 minutes, the greatest carrier strike in history will launch, and the American fleet will be erased from the maps. Nagumo looks at his watch. The sea is calm. The pride of Japan is at the zenith of its power. Then, the sky begins to scream. June 4th, 1942. 10:22 a.m. Latitude 30 degrees north, longitude 176 degrees west. The sound is not a roar, but a high-pitched, tearing whistle. The sound of air screaming through the perforated dive flaps of Douglas S.B.D. Dauntlesses. Admiral Nagumo looks up from the bridge of the Akagi. For the last hour, his attention has been glued to the horizon, watching his Zeke fighters slaughter the low-level American torpedo planes. He has been looking at the surface of the sea, expecting the threat to come from the waves. He, and every lookout on the Japanese fleet, has forgotten to look at the sun. High above, at 14,000 feet, Lieutenant Commander Clarence Wade McCluskey and his 2 squadrons from the Enterprise have found the golden hole in the Japanese defense. The Japanese Combat Air Patrol, CAP, is at sea level and exhausted and out of ammunition from chasing the torpedo bombers. The sky above the Kido Butai is empty. "Hell divers!" a lookout screams, but the warning is drowned out by the first detonation. The Kaga is the first to bloom into a pillar of fire. 4 1,000-pound bombs strike her in rapid succession. One penetrates the flight deck right near the bridge, vaporizing the senior officers. On her deck, fueled and armed planes are tossed like toys into a furnace of their own making. Nagumo watches in stunned, paralyzed silence from the Akagi as, less than a mile away, his sister ship becomes a funeral pyre. But the horror has only begun. At 10:24 a.m., the Akagi itself shudders. Lieutenant Commander Richard Dick Best, leading a small element of 3 planes, dives through a hail of late-reacting AA fire. His bomb punches through the Akagi's flight deck near the midship elevator and explodes in the upper hangar. It is the worst possible place for a hit. The hangar is a tomb of volatile oxygen and high explosives. The Long Lance torpedoes and the ground bombs that were discarded during the frantic rearming process are stacked against the bulkheads. Best's bomb triggers a chain reaction. The Akagi doesn't just burn. She exhales fire. The internal explosions are so violent, they bulge the flight deck upward like a blister. Within 3 minutes, 2/3 of Japan's carrier strength in the area is neutralized. To the north, the Soryu is also reeling, struck by 3 bombs from the Yorktown's VB-3. She is a floating wreck within minutes, her engines dead, her crew forced into the blistering sea. Nagumo stands on his bridge. He's surrounded by smoke so thick it tastes like scorched rubber and copper. His chief of staff, Ryunosuke Kusaka, urges him to transfer his flag to a cruiser. But Nagumo is catatonic. He stares at the burning planes on his deck, the elite pilots he has trained for years, now screaming as they are consumed by the flames of their own fuel. Finally, he is physically moved toward a window. He has to rappel down a rope from the bridge because the ladders are melted or blocked by fire. As he reaches the deck of the light cruiser Nagara, he looks back at the horizon. This is the moment of the great silence. Nagumo looks to his wireless operators. He expects reports. He expects a counterattack. He expects the Kido Butai to roar back. Instead, there is nothing. The radio frequency for the carrier division, usually a hive of chatter, the coordinate checks and triumphant Banzais, is dead. For 6 minutes, Nagumo stares at the radio equipment. He watches the signalman desperately tuning the dials, searching for a sign of life from the Kaga, the Soryu, or the Akagi. Static, hiss, the empty rush of atmospheric white noise. In those 6 minutes, the weight of the disaster settles into his bones. He looks at the 3 columns of black smoke rising into the midday sky, marking the positions where his carriers used to be. The silence tells him what his eyes refuse to believe. The heart of the Imperial Japanese Navy has been cut out. The veteran pilots, the irreplaceable mechanics, the pride of the empire. They are all being silenced by the Pacific. The war, Nagumo whispers, though perhaps only to himself, is lost. But one carrier remains. To the north, hidden by a squall, the Hiryu has escaped the initial carnage. Rear Admiral Taman Yamaguchi, a man of fiercer temperament than Nagumo, isn't ready to accept the silence. He prepares his Sea Eagles for a final, desperate sting. June 4th, 1942, 10:50 a.m. On board the carrier Hiryu, while the Akagi, Kaga, and Soryu are transformed into drifting steel crematoriums, Rear Admiral Taman Yamaguchi, commander of Carrier Division 2, watches the horizon from the bridge of the Hiryu. He is a man of different mettle than Nagumo. Where Nagumo is cautious and traditional, Yamaguchi is a firebrand, often cited as the true successor to Isoroku Yamamoto. He does not wait for orders from the flagship. He knows the silence on the radio means the chain of command has been incinerated. Prepare for launch, Yamaguchi commands. His voice is steady, cutting through the panicked chatter of his staff. We will find the American carriers. We will strike them until they join our sisters at the bottom. At 10:58 a.m., 18 Type 99 Val dive bombers, and led by the veteran Lieutenant Mikio Kobayashi, roar off the Hiryu's deck. They are escorted by only 6 Zeros, all that can be spared. It is a suicide mission in all but name. As they climb, they pass the columns of oily black smoke marking the graves of the other 3 carriers. The pilots look down, seeing the tiny specks of sailors bobbing in the water, and their resolve hardens into a cold, diamond-like fury. By noon, Kobayashi's scouts find the USS Yorktown. The American carrier, recently repaired in a miracle 72-hour turnaround at Pearl Harbor, is a hive of activity. Her radar picks up the incoming Japanese planes at 40 miles. F-4F Wildcats, scrambled from her deck, intercept the Vals, and a chaotic dogfight erupts in the brilliant blue sky. Despite heavy losses, 7 Japanese bombers break through the curtain of lead put up by the Yorktown's escorts. 3 bombs find their mark. One plunges down the funnel, snuffing out the Yorktown's boilers. The great ship slows, then stops. Her radar goes dark. Her lights flicker and die. To Kobayashi's remaining pilots, she looks like a doomed hulk. Back on the Nagara, Nagumo receives the first spark of news in hours. The enemy carrier is burning, the report reads. For a fleeting moment, a ghost of hope returns to the Admiral's face. Perhaps the silence can be broken. Perhaps the scales can be leveled. But the Americans are not finished. Even as the Yorktown's crew performs their own miracle, Patching the deck and relighting the boilers within 2 hours, Yamaguchi launches a second wave from the Hiryu. This time, it is the torpedo planes, led by the crippled but defiant Lieutenant Joichi Tominaga. His plane's left wing tank is leaking fuel. He knows he does not have enough gas to return. He bows to his men, climbs into his cockpit, and leads the charge. At 2:30 p.m., they find the Yorktown again, because the Americans have worked so fast to repair her. The Japanese pilots believe she is a second, undamaged carrier. 2 long-lance torpedoes slam into her port side. The Yorktown staggers, lists 26 degrees, and the order is given to abandon ship. Yamaguchi receives the news with a grim smile. He believes he has leveled the score, 2 American carriers for 3 Japanese. He orders his remaining handful of pilots, now down to just 6 fighters and 5 bombers, to prepare for a third strike at dusk. But the 6-minute silence of the morning was not a fluke, and it was a prophecy. While Yamaguchi's men eat a final meal of rice balls and tea, the American scout planes from the Enterprise find him. The Hiryu, the Flying Dragon, is no longer hidden by the squall. At 5 p.m., 24 dauntless dive bombers descend from the sun. There are no Japanese Zeros left to stop them. 4 1,000-pound bombs strike the Hiryu in a devastating line. The forward half of her flight deck is blown upward, folding back against the bridge, blinding the navigators. The circle is complete. All 4 of the Kido Butai's carriers are now burning. As night falls over the Pacific, the fires on the water act as beacons for the scavengers of war. Nagumo, now a broken man, orders a general retirement. But Yamaguchi stays. He orders his men to abandon ship, ties himself to the bridge alongside his captain, and shares a final cup of water. As the Hiryu is scuttled by Japanese torpedoes to prevent capture, the sun sets on the Imperial Japanese Navy's era of supremacy. The silence that began at 10:22 a.m. has now become permanent. The tide has not just turned, it has gone out, leaving the Empire of the Sun stranded on the jagged rocks of reality.